Procedura por la traducción.
Sí,
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for waiting. We are sorry we are just a few minutes late on the timing. My name is Alice Barberon. I'm the General Delegate of SSE International Forum, and it is a pleasure to welcome you today to this fourth virtual session of the Mont-Blanc meetings, which will tackle the subject of respectful globalization. On m'entend plus apparemment. Jean me dit qu'il m'entend pas. Okay. Tu m'entends vraiment? Okay. Okay, sorry, because Jean Fabre is telling me that he cannot hear me, but let's assume that you can all hear me. So the subject of today will be the SDGs, respectful globalization, and the role of SSE in this. Please, if you want to listen to the simultaneous translation, you can click on the co-chair of SSE International Forum, Elisa Torrenegra.
¿Me están escuchando?
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, good morning. I would like to greet all of the attendees, especially all of our Asia, Europe, and Asia friends, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone from America. I would like to extend a special greetings to the presenters and speakers, to our moderator, Yassi Morales. And let's just begin today with a new session of Mont-Blanc Encounters. Mont-Blanc Encounters was born 10 years ago in Geneva. And with this, it was done under three main premises. First of all, the need, the solidarity sector follows, the social sector of gathering and sharing knowledge. Secondly, the need of co-creating in order to power individuality. And thirdly, meeting in the main decision-making scenarios worldwide. This year, due to the pandemic that has hit us worldwide caused by the COVID, we have moved forward with a virtual modality for the Mont-Blanc meetings 2020. Through this, we have now already performed 3 sessions before today, and today the fourth one will take place, and a concluding session will happen next Thursday, October the 1st. So we've had 3 previous sessions. This is the fourth one, and we will be looking at promoting respectful globalization, the internalization of social solidarity economy, the sustainable goals, as well as environmental impact. Some essential points to be looked at from the social solidarity economy worldwide. My company of Aligned Core, our co-president, the General Assembly, the Administration Council would like to welcome each and every one of you. Last time we were talking about how throughout this pandemic, many inequalities were uncovered with some cruel realities, political, social, economic, educational, and health systems that were vulnerable, but mostly people from all social classes, all races, and all continents facing a situation we didn't know how to make front. It was all new. Everything remains new, and everything will remain new if we wish it to be so. Throughout 2020, something became very evident. We are vulnerable, and the way in which we treat our world and our people is not the best. Neither is it the most sustainable for the medium and long term. Thanks to this experiences that have at times been very painful throughout 2020, the need for everyone to work together in order to reach sustainable development goals has become clearer, of becoming more respectful on the way in which we use globalization in our livelihood and way of living, a respectful way that will work for each us all. On top of that, this year, 2020, has also given us the historic responsibility to profit from this breaking of barriers, of this breaking of borders. Because the mechanism we are using today, this technological mechanism, allows us to transcend in something very important, which is the internationalization of behaviors. And today, in this forum, this internationalization, we're going to be canalizing it through social, economic, societies as a viable response to all of the problematics that are pressing on our planet. Problematics in America, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. Every single one of these become one. The vulnerability of human beings and the need for mutual help, as well as the solidary help, the compassive glance and supportive glance between us all. Now is the time, colleagues of mine, to take a step forward, to start, to take the main stage with consensus, with responsibility, with measure and reflection. Now, more than ever, we have in front of us our own equality in the midst of all these differences. Each and every one of us are equally as vulnerable to catch a virus today, to be hit by this economic and climate crisis. We've all seen them, we have them here. So what else is it to come? And what will happen to social economy in the midst of this? So we need to look at each and every one of these topics with the intention of making our solidary social economy in the world to grow, to become more visible, to be more valued, but above everything else, to act in an effective, efficient way amongst all of ours and those who still don't know about us. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this new session of Mont-Blanc meetings, preparing for the grand concluding session, which will very soon happen on October the 1st. There, we will also be proposing some documents in the face of all of the decision-making institution with a message for solidary social economy for each of the topics we have discussed. So let's have a conclusion, let's have a key purpose in order for us every day to take a decisive step forward, knowing that we are a main stage for our world today. Thank you very much.
Buenos días.
Good morning, can you hear me? Hi? So can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Perfect. So good morning or good afternoon to each and every one of you. I am Jassy Morales Chaco, and I will be moderating this presentation. I am a member of the Administrative Forum of Social Solidary Economy. I participated in Mont-Blanc meetings in 2005 as a student. I'm a solidary student as well as a translator. And I've been participating also in Costa Rica for social economy, and for the past 5 years I've worked as a coordinator of the social economy in the Costa Rica University. In my work life, I've been very close to also being part of ecology, feminist movements for community life, union movements, or artist movements. Different actors for solidarity economy have been working in articulative process at a regional and international level for many decades now. However, during the past millennial, the start of this between the different families of social solidarity economy was only starting to give its fruits. Mont-Blanc meetings, just like our president mentioned, were born in 2004 as a space for articulating leaders from different solidarity economy companies, such as the House of Social Solidarity Economy, allowing them to generate alliances, analyzing common interest topics, such as, for example, the world food shortage, working about renewable energies, in order to drive forward new projects in countries and regions in need. During the 2011 meetings, we were in the need of positioning the practices of social solidarity economy in public spaces, political international spaces, and we searched for the recognition and acknowledgement of social solidarity economy in sustainable development in international waters during the 2012. There, we also agreed with Reciprocally for the incidence of articulations of different organizations, companies, and local governments, which started to generate different spaces of work with different work methods that are also very specific to social solidarity economy, such as USEF. In 2013, the Interagency of the United Nations for Social Solidarity Economy, also in 2013. And after 5 years of working with governments or other international organizations, in 2016, we managed to get visibility for social solidarity economy for the first time during the declaration of Habitat 3 and continue working in the different articulations of the expression of social solidarity economy in order to foster practices in different communities, recognizing cultural differences and different focuses provided to this practice that solves really the economic needs, social needs, and political needs that human beings have, that are sometimes reflected in sustainable development goals, but in some others, it's not. For example, needs for social bonding, participation, collective identity, etc. Technology of communication and collaborative work have allowed us now to start linking in different continents to manage and see how different initiatives move forward for social solidarity economy projects. The current scenario makes us make face to the diversity of actors who can work together to take care and the crisis that we're currently presenting and the common well-being. This will allow us to generate the panel for a respectful solidarity, the internationalization of social solidarity economy, as well as the sustainable development goals and the ecological pact that we all require as humankind. We will add these themes just thanks to the participation of 3 different members of the panel, Mr. Jürgen Schwedman, Ariel Warco, and David Kies, who will have 15 minutes each to share their presentations with us, and we will after provide some time for a Q&A session for all of the participants who have joined us in the chat. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce in further detail Jürgen Schwedman, an international expert in international cooperation for development, cooperative development, rural financing, and the commercialization of harvest for export and policies in order to formalize formal economy. Jürgen worked for 27 years in the IoT in several responsibility and leadership positions. Thank you very much, Jürgen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I would like to talk about the relationship between the social and solidarity economy and the sustainable development goals. And to do so, I have prepared a short PowerPoint presentation, which I would like the organizer to put on the screen right now. Can you please put the PowerPoint?
You should see the PowerPoint on the, yes.
Okay, yeah, now I've seen it. If you can put it back. Okay, I think it's now visible on the screen. It's a presentation which I called Access and Inclusion on the role of the social and solidarity economy in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Next page, please. The argument I would like to develop is the following. The 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development promises to leave no one behind. It's a very central topic of the 2030 Agenda. To fulfill this promise, those that are currently left behind, and these are mostly the poor people or people working in the informal economy, need opportunities, they need security and protection, and they need empowerment. Opportunities, security, and empowerment can be generated through improved access and inclusivity. The social and solidarity economy plays a critical role in facilitating access and inclusion and ensuring inclusion. And therefore, we believe that the social and solidarity economy should concentrate its energy on the 23 access or inclusion related SDG targets. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets, out of which 23 focus on access and inclusion. And I will develop that argument in the following slides. Yes, next slide, please. Leaving no one behind. You remember the Mdgs, the 8 Millennium Development Goals. Many of them which have been actually achieved. For example, Mdg 1 on poverty, halving poverty, was achieved, but not because poverty has been reduced in all countries in the world. It was achieved because progress made in China and India. Many other countries were left behind. Progress had been uneven throughout the developing world, and the UN's final Mdg report acknowledged that the poorest and most vulnerable people and countries have been left behind by the Millennium Development Goals. That's why the 2030 Agenda, which was adopted in 2015, declared that as we embark on this great collective journey, we pledge that no one will be left behind. Recognizing that the dignity of the human person is fundamental, we wish to see the goals and targets met for all nations and all peoples and for all segments of society. And we will endeavor to reach this the furthest behind first. That is the central promise of the Agenda 2030. Next slide, please. The SSE and the 2030 Agenda. There are numerous publications that have been prepared over the last 5 years on the relationship between the two, between 2030 and the SSE. And these papers have adopted different approaches. One is a comprehensive approach, showing that the SSE has a potential to contribute to each and every of the 17 SDGs. This might be correct. Indeed, one could possibly find a relationship between each goal and the SSE. But in my personal view, this is not a very effective way of proceeding, because in doing so, one loses the specificity of the SSE. Certain sustainable development goals and especially targets can be achieved by governments. Others can be achieved by multinationals, and some can be achieved by the social and solidarity economy. The second approach is the thematic one. The SSE can play an important role in certain areas, for example, in the extension of social protection or the formalization of the informal economy. And then there is a target-oriented approach, consisting of selecting SSE-friendly targets among the 169 SDG targets. And I propose here an extension of that third approach by focusing on those SDG targets that call for better access and greater inclusion. Next slide, please. Why access and inclusion? The term access appears 56 times in the 2030 Agenda. And by access is meant is access to finance, access to land, access to market, access to rights, and so on. Creating access through collective action is precisely the role and raison d'etre of SSE organizations. They provide access to markets, finance, rights in situations where individuals are powerless and excluded from services rendered by the state and the private sector. That's the very raison d'etre of SSE organizations. The term inclusion or inclusive appears 45 times in the Agenda 2030. It means the social, economic and political inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion or economic or other status. The SSE is by nature and conviction best suited to foster inclusivity. Next slide, please. Therefore, I believe that the social and solidarity economy, in its efforts to contribute to the 2030 agenda, should focus on 23 SDG targets that mention access and inclusion. And I give a few examples. Next slide, please. For example, take the SDG target 2.3. SDG 2 is on hunger. Target 2.3 calls for, by 2030, double the agricultural productivity and the incomes of small-scale food producers, particularly women, indigenous peoples, family farmers, pastoralists and fishers, including through secure and equal access to land, other productive resources and inputs, knowledge, financial services, markets, opportunities for value addition, and non-farm employment. It's a very, very broad target, as you can see, but it's actually a target that is subject of the activity of many SSE organizations, including agricultural marketing and supply cooperatives, credit unions, popular banks, many other initiatives. Many of these organizations have been formed to facilitate access of individuals to markets, finance and credit. The second example, next slide please, on inclusion. This is SDG target 16.7 under the SDG 16 peaceful societies, and ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory and representative decision making at all levels. This would refer to the societal and political role of SSE organizations. For example, those that represent the interests of marginalized population groups. A good example are the self-help group of migrant domestic workers. I prepared a paper some 2 years ago on migrant domestic workers and found out that in many countries these migrant domestic workers are organized in self-help groups because they are not protected by labor law in the recipient countries and need to find a way of representing their interest. Okay, I think I'm coming to the end of my presentation. There's a last slide. The SSE, the term SSE has not been mentioned at all in the 2030 agenda. Only the term cooperatives appears twice in the agenda, but only in relation to it being a certain form of enterprise. It does not refer at all to the other dimension of cooperative, being an association of people, being having a societal and political role. So the SSE has not been adequately reflected in the 2030 agenda. Since that agenda cannot be changed now, it will be important to influence the periodic SDG review process to gain greater visibility and to become more active in the implementation process of the SDGs. The review process consists of 3 streams. The thematic review of clusters of SDG by the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, which meets every year, in New York. I don't know if it meets physically this year, but perhaps next year again. Then there are so-called voluntary national reviews of the implementation of the SDGs at the national and subnational level. And finally, the preparation by the UN Secretary General of an annual Sustainable Development Report. What is important here is that the SSE organizations at the national level and at the global level as well become active in taking part in these review processes and in demonstrating the effective role of the SSE in creating access and ensuring inclusivity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Jürgen, por mostrarnos la importancia del acceso y la inclusión para el logro de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, ¿verdad? Y cómo justamente la economía social solidaria puede concentrarse en aportar a esas 23 metas que identificas que abordan estas necesidades de acceso e inclusión por sus propias características. También nos permites identificar, ¿verdad?, la proyección que podemos hacer de trabajo de incidencia para el reconocimiento y la valoración de la economía social solidaria en procesos tanto nacionales por estas revisiones, ¿verdad?
For these reviews as internationals. And also, thank you so much for the respect time, definitely. So, the cooperatives, like the families for social solidarity economy that's highly recognized and institutionalized, represented in all parts of the planet, we are very interested in understanding what is the work that has been performed from the International Cooperative Alliance regarding the SDGs. In order for this, we would now like to give the floor to Mr. Ariel Barco, President of the International Cooperative Alliance since 2017, Argentinian cooperative leader related to the cooperation institutions for the past 20 years, and president of the Confederation of Electric and Public Services Cooperative of Buenos Aires City, as well as the Confederation of Cooperative of the Argentinian Republic since 2011. Thank you so much, Ariel.
Can everyone hear me? Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? I'm not sure if everyone in the audience can hear me. Okay, well, good morning to everyone in Argentina and in America. Thank you and welcome all from whenever you're listening to us. I would like to thank the organizers for having invited me to share some different points of view on the Sustainable Development Goals and the internalization of SSE from the perspective of the International Cooperative Alliance. Now, I would like to first of all greet all the members of the panel. I'm very happy for us to be here today. Now, first of all, I would like to highlight that, in my opinion, the 2030 Agenda is a result of the huge concern that we all have for sustainability of our civilization. In a situation in which there are increasing inequality, social inequality, and global warming that is endangering life, this is of concern to us. Now, the work of the UN to transform of these concerns into solid international consensus that is linked to the 17 SDGs, it is not only appropriate, but it is paramount. The cooperative movement leads and accompanies this consensus, and we have incorporated it into our own planning. Last October, in our General Assembly, carried out in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, we passed a strategic plan for the next decade, a plan that is aligned to the 2030 Agenda in goals and timeline. Now, this consensus that we've reached should be broadened, and we must include all stakeholders that are engaged with this agenda, especially those who are identified to working on social and solidarity economy, because not all companies respond to any development model. By this I mean that sustainable development requires enterprises to be compatible with this point of view. Because of their governance, they can show the triple dimension of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. Social and solidarity economy will in this way be coherent with a development plan that can go forward hand in hand with the people, and actually has people and the environment at the center, at the core. The cooperative response and that is now facing monopolies and unjust entities in 2020 is now providing and guaranteeing democratic management, economic participation, and social justice. Now, from the same point of view, we can say that there is an entrenched, a very deep relationship between the economic models and the results that we have in our society. Now, for us, inequality, social inequality, environmental crisis, and the health crisis that we're all facing with the pandemic are consequences of a model that will now favor economic concentration. And it, to this point, has been focused only on the profitability of capital. Sustainable development demands to rebuild relationships and linkages between production and the land and the people that live in that land, and it also seeks for us to strive for well-being and to take care of the places that are inhabited. Now, working in the sense is the main challenge that we have in SSE. In ASSE, we have started this debate and we've worked on it in all regions, in all productive sectors, and in all the networks and the thematic committees that are part of this structure. We even stated it last year in a very interesting activity that we organized with the ILO on the celebration of the centenary of the 100 years of this organization. Now, one of them was a very valuable report that we organized by the World Commission on the Future of Work. This report expressed different concerns, amongst them the contradiction that existed between the need of investment that the creation of decent work had, and the defense and the protection of the environment, and the need to increase the short-term benefit that the company model has, the one that is based on accumulating capital. The Commission on the Future of Work that was called for by the ILO called for increasing the representation of the interested party, increasing the accountability of the companies, and in favor of social and community interests. Now, this can mean, amongst other measures, that we must implement consultation bodies and establish ways of representation of the people in financial regulation. Now, we completely agree to this, and this is what we stated before the representatives of governments, of companies, and unions that are part of the ILO. This is a governance problem. The problem is why we organize companies and with what goals our decisions are made. Now, if we agree on all of this, one of the main concerns should be to guarantee financing of companies in favor of decent work and in defense of the environment. Now, at the same time, this will lead us to discuss on how we orient our resources for international cooperation and of the system. Now, some companies guarantee bigger benefits on the short term, but there should actually be companies that should guarantee and should focus on the long term and focus on having people at the center as well as the environment. This is the current problem that we have, and if we should have more people to support social and solidarity economy, and we should really foster its development. That is why in that meeting with the ILO, we also proposed to company owners, unions, and governments that the public funds that were directed to financing projects for the development of rural areas, the development of sustainable public services, and all of these plans in favor of decent work should prioritize companies that are developing programs that are people-centered. So companies that are social, that are those of social and solidarity economy. Now, we also decided to align our efforts in the next 10 years to the 2030 agenda. But we don't want this to be just a declaration of commitments. We want our efforts to be shared with the society. We have analyzed our goals and the role of the cooperatives to identify what goals we should focus more on. This work has been done through the sectorial organizations in order to be able to reflect their specificities. Now, based on the identified goals, we are developing concrete indicators that will allow us to meet the contributions and participation of the cooperatives. And we're working with the members to verify what data we currently have available to develop those indicators. We hope that these kinds of contributions can be presented publicly as an action plan from the global cooperative movement during the next Congress, World Congress of Cooperatives that will happen in Seoul next year if conditions allow it to do so. I believe that this is an effort that we could all add forces to, supporting social and solidarity economy. The International Cooperative Alliance represents the largest networks of companies and territories that are based on values and principles that are very important for building sustainability. We are companies that are based on mutual help, and we have been built on inter-cooperation, and we manage in a democratic and open way. All of us here are convinced of the need to consolidate a global alliance for sustainable development, and we should mobilize and join forces to develop this network made of 3 million cooperatives, 2,800 million workers, and 1,200 million associates. Together, we must understand that there are different ways to develop our economy, ways that are more aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. This is why these kinds of meetings are of utmost importance, because together we contribute to promoting this new globalization, a globalization that will have values and solidarity principles, and that will assure democracy, continuance, and constructing peace relationship between the peoples. That is why we are calling governments to regulate the financial system in favor of real economy. We will also like to call out the government so that they can strengthen the international cooperation tools, because again, today, they have a key role into facing the crisis that we are now seeing worldwide. However, I think that the most important aspect is to invite society as a whole to join forces and to build this new kind of economy, an economy of social and solidarity economy. We must all work together and strive for this. We must show that we are not only socially responsible companies, but we have the best models in order to make sure that those that are concerned by the environment, by social inequality and peace can really put their energy and effort in transforming this. For example, those who are seeking to transform the agricultural system should know that in social economy, they have the adequate models to do so. We will have a system that will be socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable if we can really question what is happening worldwide in the consumption chains and what is happening in the different sectors. If we can question what is happening, and if we as farmers and workers can really use the progress that is done in science in order to help ourselves in the long term and not only in the short term, and without harming biodiversity and the land. In the same way, for all of those who are concerned about the development of new technologies and the precarization of work, we must show all the different alternatives that we have in social and solidarity economy. We must show people that there are different ways of working. For example, in platform economy, we have extraordinary examples worldwide. There's a lot of innovative energy that is tracing new paths that will allow us to include new technologies in the organization of work, and all of this without leading to harming the workforce. We must also share the need of changing the energy matrix and share that it's not only a problem in technology, but it's about sharing and distributing energy. It's also very important to call out to the hydrocarbon sector and those who have economic power concentrated in their hands and ask them to focus on renewable energies and to leave that old business logic and to move towards service logic. In the same way, protecting each civil society, each population, and each land. Now, for this, we need initiatives from the civil society, because together we can complete this puzzle and together create social companies, and we can help the way states are managing things. Now, to our proposal, we can also add all the peoples that share the idea of the need to modify the financial system. We must tell others that it's not only about financial inclusion, but about the democratization of the financial system. Communities must regain sovereignty over their land and over their savings. They must regain that capacity to decide on what they will save on and how they will investment. That is democratizing the financial system. And we have worked on that for a long time through solidarity financing. The movement of women and diverse identity is another example of this transformation that is occurring socially, culturally, and economically worldwide. The UN has a specific goal that is gender equality oriented. And in fact, we have a very large agenda in common, and it also involves including gender equality in all our all the steps of our plan. We should also make sure that everyone has access to care, because this is also included in social and solidarity economy. These are just some examples. I could go on sharing them, but we must show that we have the necessary organization models in order to develop sustainably, to take care of people, of the environment, and to overcome the social issues that have been expanded because of the pandemic. This is a challenge for us, and we must face this challenge in order to be able to jointly face these huge challenges as people. We could also continue talking about SSE and the Sustainable Development Goals, but I would like to focus on Goal 16 specifically, attaining peace. There are so many conflicts worldwide, conflicts that are far from being resolved, and conflicts that are creating a lot of violence to many people. We are also facing the worst migratory crisis since the end of the Second World War. I'm sure that the pandemic and the crisis will do nothing else than increase these tensions. The world needs social and solidarity economy to create answers and solutions to these conflicts and issues. The UN General Secretary highlighted that the cooperative companies play a very important role in the strategies to create proposals for refugees. Last year, in the General Assembly of ASEE in Kigali, we developed a cooperative plan for positive peace. This means peace not only as the absence of direct violence, but as a way to overcome inequality and structural inequality in our communities. Now, to wrap up, I think that this could be a great way to solve the current issues that we are facing and to meet the SDGs. We can be protagonists of attaining peace, and we can also create a more fair, a more inclusive economy that is people-centered and that will take care of the environment. With this, I would like to close my intervention, and I would like to invite everyone to continue working on building a fairer a more solidary world that is also more inclusive and that is definitely sustainable, where we can all live decently. All of us who are currently living in this world are a common home, and where future generations can also grow. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ariel. That was quite a lot of information concentrated in a brief amount of time, but these are great accomplishments, and thank you very much for raising the topic of governments and for putting it at the center. The importance of guaranteeing financing in companies that actually provide decent work. And thank you for presenting us with this challenge of calling out to the governments and society as a general in order for us to jointly address topics on food, on technology, on financing, and all the other issues that we are currently facing. Thank you very much for your conclusion and for stating that SSE can lead to a fairer and a more peaceful interaction between people. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to David Hies, who is Professor of Law at the University of Luxembourg, and he's worked in this department since 2012. He has also done research on social economy, and he currently works on elaborating a guideline for the drafting of laws on SSE. Thank you, David. You have the floor.
Invité à parler de.
Thank you very much for having invited me to talk about the relationships that we can see between the Sustainable Development Goals and SSE, as well as the drafting of a law that has to do, or a piece of law, better said, that has to do with social and solidarity economy. I'm sorry, but the interpreters are not hearing the panelists correctly at the moment. So a lot of SDGs have always been at the very center of SSE, even before. Unfortunately, the panelist seems to have lost his connection. Please bear with us. David, we can't hear you anymore, so we are going to start again as soon as we manage to tackle this problem correctly.
David, on te voit si tu veux enchaîner.
David, we can see you now. So I'm going to start again from the introduction. Then please do let me know if we have a problem. So I was saying that really the starting point, I believe, was keeping in mind the fact that SSE has always had a perspective that was centered on the so-called Sustainable Development Goals, even before their adoption and isolation by the United Nations. So I'm going to give you a few examples considering the big movements of SSE. First of all, if we think about cooperatives, we can see a classical formula. That is to say, we could say that cooperation is the daughter of property. And we have been saying that since the 19th century, so the daughter of poverty. The poorer we are, the more difficulties we have to face, the more fragile we are. Of course, the more we try to find a common solution. So the fact that poverty can disappear is included in one of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that is the common root with the cooperative movement. If we consider the non-profit sector, or the so-called charities, we see that a lot of objectives presented have always been the social object, if you will, or the explicit goal of those movements. That is to say, the whole NPO sector. So I could be saying the same if we wanted to talk about community economy in South America or in Germany with all the alternative movements that we've been observing. So different flaws that have always tried to redefine cities and life in terms of greater solidarity, and that's obviously one of the objectives that we can see in the SDGs. So if we try to determine why we need SDGs, I believe that it could be, one thing could be important. We should not overestimate them. The SDGs are kind of a compass, in my opinion, a compass, first and foremost, for the states, because they will allow the states to define their public policies and legislative choices. So that's why I define them as a compass. So public policies and legislative choices that they must implement. There are also goals not to be confused with concrete measures or actions or precise rules. SDGs haven't got any strength from a legislative viewpoint, and we can't simply declare the end of poverty to make it true or to make it real. This is not to underestimate them, but please do keep in mind that they are a direction, a positive direction towards which we must move together with the the countries at an international level to try and reach those goals. In this context, it is also important to keep in mind that the SDGs are principles, are basic elements that should not be banalized. In particular, when we talk about fighting poverty. So nobody would be against fighting poverty. And the most powerful enterprises are the ones that contribute the most to this problem. So that's why they're trying to solve it. That is the reason why SDGs must be taken seriously, to show that SSE can give a contribution without making it banal. SSE is particularly fit for this pursuit of SDGs. And from this perspective, I would like to quote a research paper that was produced by UNISD. Voilà, donc I'm sorry. This is what I would be showing you if you could only see my slides. Sorry about that. So this was a quote on the link that you can see between social and solidarity economy and sustainable development. And I'm just going to be brief because we don't have that much time. So a democratical and multi-actor dimension of SSE, which is really fit to this attempt that we see to try and tackle and solve those problems, even if there are some contradictions. So we are also talking about social exclusion, discrimination, because those who are affected need to be empowered through democratic and participatory policies. We shan't forget the gender gap, because SDGs are not just going to happen on a wide popular basis. So I also believe that we don't really need to comment on these any further. The fact that there is this type of proximity between SSE and SDGs was seen by international organization, and I think that we can see that this has been recognized at an.
And so it is easy to see thanks to ILO, actually, and we can think about its recommendations in favor of cooperatives. And recently, in 2018, there was also the declaration adopted by the General Assembly of UN. And actually, it was based on agriculture, and so the rights of people working in the agricultural field, that is an essential part of SSE, actually. And then I also would like to mention, just to conclude, the recognition given by the Secretary General of the United States during the General Assembly, and they mentioned the principles, the main principles actually, of the social and solidarity economy. And so the self-management, the reciprocity, and the democracy in the economic activities. So I think that from this standpoint, we can say, but actually this is not my real conclusion, but we can at least say that there is an orientation towards a social and solidarity economy going towards the SDGs. So we need to take into consideration SDGs as a common pathway to follow. And then, of course, we have law. So the SSE law, that seems to be a factor of promotion of SSE at the international level and therefore of SDGs. It is clear that we keep on insisting that over the last 10 years, we keep on insisting on the multiplication of SSEs all over the world. And right now, those examples are present on every single continent because there is a kind of open vision of SSE. So there is a greater and growing number of laws that are implemented, that are studied even in this moment. And each law of SSE have an important part within this model. That doesn't mean that we wanted to place a flag, for example, on a new country, but we wanted to create a new model that is always different from the previous ones, and also a new base of experiences for new interventions and actions, and also for some sub-regional interventions, if possible. And those sub-regional interventions are especially important in several parts of the world, for example, in Africa, in order to harmonize the laws, or again in South America, where there are some sub-regional regulations, and of course in Europe. I think that the next step would be a resolution of the General Assembly of the UN that could be in favor of the development of SSE. And to conclude, I would like to go back in order to talk about the change of qualitative scale. And I would like to focus and insist on the fact that this change is not a quantitative one, but it also needs to be a qualitative one. So we always keep a lot of attention, we always pay a lot of attention on the fact that sometimes there is no need to put in place some more laws or some more initiatives, actually. But actually, SSE initiatives are essential everywhere in the world, especially in this moment. And so, this change of qualitative scale is one of the main pillars, actually, of SSE. Among the other pillars, there is also the autonomy and independence of everyone, of every single person on our planet. And so the individual cannot be seen anymore as just a part, a piece, actually, of a global model. The individuals do not have to be seen anymore as consumers only, actually. Consumption is fundamental in order to meet our needs, and we all know that. But when consumption is only the way in order to activate the economic model, then it means that the system is wrong. And so the negative consequences that we have right now in our world, such as, for example, unemployment, are a real risk for everybody, and they could lead us to a recession. So we need to think about a chosen degrowth. And we always need to keep in our minds that social and solidarity economy is not only there to solve the problems caused by the economic system, but it also represents a model for the economic system and model that we will need to put in place tomorrow in the future. Thank you.
Aló, ¿se escucha?
Can you hear me? Hello? Hi, can you hear me? Yes? Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, David, for having showed us the importance of the informative guidelines for the expression of solidary social economy, including also communitary economies, as a very important factor for the promotion of social solidarity economy and therefore for the SDGs. And this taking into account especially framework models or possibilities for how to organize in order to develop common well-being practices. Also, as a position and the challenge you provided us of really start thinking about a system that is targeting growth and to build this in a collective way from the creativity nourished by precisely this valorization of individual inputs through the diversity of all different actors and people of social solidarity economy. I wanted to say that we had foretold at the beginning that we wanted the participation of Mr. Satya Tipari, the Undersecretary of the United Nations. However, we have been finding some difficulties because he currently is in a meeting with the Pakistani government. So he asked us to please excuse him and apologize on his behalf because this was an unexpected meeting and he cannot join us. So we are sorry not to have him here with us, but we know that he had the full intention to be here, and hopefully at some other point we'll be able to have some conversations with him. So we'll now open the floor for questions from the audience. Let me just read through the chat to see if there are any questions right now. Sorry about that. Okay, so I apologize because we were looking for the answers, but I cannot see them on the email.
qui est un terreau favorable pour l'émergence de l'économie sociale et solidaire? Et comment l'Afrique pourrait-elle s'inspirer d'expériences pour améliorer le cadre juridique?
And how can Africa improve actually the policy system in order to reinforce the SSE?
Claro, sí, muchas gracias.
Right, thank you. So, who would like to start with the answer for that question? You can raise your hands.
Il existe, donc je l'ai dit, une...
As I was saying, there are several laws. So it is very good actually that we have so many laws, because in that way we have different models. And at the same time, for the users, let's say, this is not very easy actually, because sometimes there is not a good access to those laws. So that's why we keep on working together with the international SSE in order to create some guidelines. And we have been working on this project for some years now in order to gather several documents and materials and pieces of information, and we hope we will be able to propose that document in the short future. And I would like to say that I'm not sure that countries will find a feasible model actually to replicate. Maybe the different countries will find some inspiration, because they will see some examples of the difficulties that they are facing, but they do not have to just copy that model.
Thank you so much, David.
Si vous avez des réactions sur la première question.
So if you have some more reactions about the first question concerning the African model. Ariel, you have the floor now.
Sí.
Sure. So, first of all, thank you very much, Sassy. Thank you so much, Anne. I personally believe that we need to focus on establishing dialogues with governments, and we need to prove that from the SSE, from cooperation, from there, they can start considering us as allies for the development model in each country, in each presence, and see us as a strategic instrument that can help them achieve this development. This must come hand in hand with the fact that we can start working more and more along with governments in the legal framework in accordance to the cooperative movement, to the development of the social solidarity economy of each of them within the local and international level. And particularly try to have influence in the fact to understand the different legal frameworks that gave motion to different models, and how each of these different legal natures, specific legal natures, might contribute to joint effort, to strategic efforts that will prove benefic for each of these countries. Through the International Cooperative Alliance, we have developed a very important space through which we've used different routes, different foundations. For example, from the National Legislature Committee, that will give room for each of the countries who request help and support for performing the work I've already mentioned with it. And for recent months, we've been receiving a request for over 50 countries for this, and we are supporting each of them from the international offices and from all of the International Cooperative Alliance infrastructure.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to give the floor to Joseph in case that you would like to answer the question. Sure. Thank you. Okay.
Co-op in Africa producing tea, coffee, essential oil. Is it difficult for co-ops here to buy and help distribute their products here in Europe, USA, first world countries? I think there's a very good example from Ethiopia. The Oromia Federation of Coffee Marketing Cooperatives, which regroups, I think, around 20,000 small-scale coffee producers, has concluded fair trade agreements with a number of European and American consumer, not cooperatives, but consumer retail shops. And in doing so, the federation is able to sell the coffee produced by small-scale producers directly to the final consumer in Europe and the US. And in doing so, generate a fair trade premium that can be used for community development, building schools, water supply system, etc. If you Google Oromia Federation of Cooperatives, you will find the example on the internet. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Jürgen. Nos pregunta si que la Organización de los Derechos Empresariales en África sigue siendo de ámbito comunitario y se ocupa únicamente la cooperativa.
They were asking us whether the social solidarity economy is going to be vaster, retaking communitary associations, cooperative impact, and Mario was asking us about the different local authorities for social solidarity economies in Senegal. Which would be, or what would the link be between these organizations and the business model that is being developed in Africa? If you could please enlighten us. Would anyone like to answer this question first? Jürgen has already started talking about it, but if anybody else would like to go in greater depth, David, maybe?
We cannot hear you, David. Can you hear me now? So actually, I didn't hear the translation of the question, so I'm not sure about really getting the point of that question. So I'm going to repeat the question in French. So the So right now we have to face we need to focus on organizations, communities, social economy, of course, and cooperatives. There are, of course, several difficulties, and especially when we talk about the sub-regional level, because in that case we needed to focus on the harmonization of the rights. So the link was present, was studied, because when we decided to create more harmonization among cooperatives, actually, we started working on that project, but then we faced a lot of difficulties. For example, one of those difficulties was the impossibility to create links between some realities that are totally different and that do not have the same national regulations, of course. And so when it comes to associations and organizations, they are more focused, of course, on the social and solidarity economy, but they are also seen as a possible danger, especially in those countries where democracy is not so stable. And so that's why we are facing a lot of huge difficulties. I think that the solution can be focused on several meetings, of course, and exchanges of point of view among experts in this field, of course, in order to understand the evolution that it is right now going on in our world. So we do not only have to focus on decision makers, but we also have to get the point of view of experts in this field. Thank you, David. Are there some other people willing to add something else? Maybe concerning the question asked by Jean Fabre. That is to say, the main principles of a good legislation in order to support SSE. So you can find the same question actually in the chat box. So I am not actually a specialist in this field, so it is quite difficult actually for me to provide an answer. Maybe you could talk about the international commerce, that is to say the other question. So
today is some international instrument on the social and solidarity economy. On the cooperative side, we have the recommendation 193 of the ILO, which has set an international standard at which we have incorporated the ICA statement on the cooperative identity. And that tool, that instrument has provided a basis for cooperative law in many, many countries, cooperative policies and law. We do not have something similar on the social and solidarity economy. But it would not be impossible to develop such a tool. It will, of course, take a while. These things take several years or even a decade. But an SSE resolution by the UN General Assembly could be the first step in developing such an instrument. And that would perhaps be one of the goals of the International Forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jürgen. So could David maybe now answer the question regarding which are the main or the key points that must be included on a good legislature in order to help the growth of the SSE in a multi-economy type of economy?
All right, I think that the first point here is to state what can't be in a piece of law about SSE. That is to say, a regulation about the functioning of SSE enterprises, because SSE is a multiple entity, a multiple body. Hence, every form of enterprise, every type of entity must have the freedom to choose without entering too much into detail. So, what are we going to find in an act about SSE? There are two main points here that could be further subdivided, but to sum them up, I would say, what is an SSE enterprise? So the principles could be some lists, for instance, not of the names of the enterprises, but a list of entities of the person type. So an orientation, if you will, for the enterprises themselves, so a kind of guide for them, but also a way so that society and public powers can say out loud who is part of SSE and who isn't. So this is of paramount importance for the stats in order for us to know who is going to benefit from social and public policies. So we can't create an act if we don't know who it is going to be applied onto. Then second point, or second element, would be to create some structures to make sure that there are some public policies in the field of SSE. Why are we doing this, actually? To make sure that special rules can be applied to those bodies. Hence, one must make sure that, first of all, you have the rules, and second, that they're going to be put into action. So we must create some instances that are going to elaborate public policies and see that they are actually implemented, and then check with some reports that they are actually implemented. And of course, who has to participate in these structures? It must be the representatives that were elected by the citizens, representatives of the administration, of course, and representatives in terms of SSE. So these are the two elements that are the very basics. So determining what SSE is and create some structures that will allow for the elaboration, for the drafting of those acts and policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Annelies, for your support, because we do have technical problems, but you've been very helpful, and that's right it. We're working as a team. Now, another question. What are the main challenges, internal and external ones, faced by the members of SSE, or the actors of SSE, while they try to have a better impact on population and to work for common well-being and the attainment of the SDGs? Ariel, would you like to answer this question? Yes, of course. I believe that there are many challenges, but the first one that we should work on is to really work on each and every one of the sectors so that there will be comprehensive integration and linkage so that we can have a common vision on on how the sustainable model that we must implement looks like, and then from then how we can implement those in the States, how we can find partners in the States so that we can have further incidence on public policies, how we can work with each and every one of the governments and countries worldwide, States. I think that this strategic alliance between all of us who are part of the civil society that is organized with states and with the different governments that do understand what SSE is about and that support these development models that are people-centered. This is all essential in order to have further visibility, incidence, and empowerment and decision-making power on public policies in different countries. Now, for this, I would like to give 2 or 3 examples. Let's look at, for example, Argentina. The body that fosters the control and that has legislation on the cooperatives is a co-managed organization. It has 7 directors, 3 come from the state, 2 come from the cooperatives, and 2 come from the mutual bodies. So it's an organization with 7 board members, 7 directors, and SSE has 4, so they have the majority. This means that in this way we can make sure that the sector is actually heard and they can actually have incidents. Another example is from Brazil. There we have a block of legislators that covers a big part of the parliament, Congress, and they act according to the proposals made from SSE. So whenever there's a topic that is discussed, debated, and that is related to SSEs, well, there intervene. This also happens in many countries in Asia and in Africa, and I think that if we have further participation in those spaces where decisions are made on public policy, we will be able to have more strength in this movement and to make it more visible. And of course, in this way, we would reach the goals that we are seeking. Thank you very much, Ariel. Irnker, would you also like to answer this question?
Maybe that's not a question directly, but since I have to leave in a few minutes, what I would like to say that since the past 40 years or so, I have attended many meetings on cooperatives and social economy in different parts of the world. The problem that I always see, and including the meeting we are having today, is that we are always talking to ourselves, those that are convinced of the value and importance of social economy. But we are not reaching out to those who are not convinced. We need to find a way of reaching people that have never heard about the social economy, that have never heard about cooperatives, and that might not even know that those organizations exist, despite the magnitude of the movement. I think that ignorance of the general public about the existence of the social and solidarity economy is one of the reasons why the SSE has not been properly recognized in the 2030 agenda. And that needs to be changed by finding a way of reaching out to everybody, not just to those who are already involved in the SSE. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you very much for participating. I would like to thank you now because you have to leave. And I will now give the floor to David on the same topic.
Au développement.
So, in terms of international development of SSE, I think that there are always hurdles of different nature, and the easiest to tackle really are the ones that have a legal nature. We need a little bit of lobbying, we need a little bit of technical knowledge at a legislative level, but it's not as complicated as when we talk about renewable energies, for instance. So Jürgen has just mentioned another issue. I would like to add a different perspective as well. SSE, well, if we admit that it is a way to be active at an economic level in a different way, really, it means that it's marginal when we consider the overall system. So this dominant system seems to be accomplishing its mission in a way which could be a little bit of a caricature nature for people who are not too poor, or make the ones who hold power even more powerful. Well, the system works, but I think that SSE should be demanding a little bit more space. Well, but we can't do it if we also say that we are not going to step onto anybody's toes. I believe that we have a peculiar responsibility right now because the system has shown its fragilities and its problems. Everybody agrees. And today we are facing a choice. Either we change our name and we totally change our face, or we can continue even more with this business as usual, trying to be more and more competitive, relying even more on technology. So we know in which direction SSE is moving. The only thing that we can say today is that we must associate with the powers that want different direction, so that we can build on the experience that we've gathered in terms of recognition, so that we can try and take a step further. We're not wizards, but that's the way it is.
Muchas gracias, David, por tu aporte. Y bueno, les agradezco
Thank you, David, for your participation. Thank you to all the participants for sharing your work, your knowledge, and the different areas you work in. I would like to thank you all because you have left us with a very clear idea of the challenges that we will now face nationally, the need for linkages, for more participation and dialogue between the SSE and other sectors. And you've talked to us about the possibility of creating democratization mechanisms. And you've talked about how important it is to participate in creating public legislation, and the fact that we need to really shed light on social and solidarity economy and how we must make it visible nationally and internationally. You've also talked about agroecology and where we can see a positive impact of SSE and how there's also knowledge sharing there. There are different points where we have all participated. We can see different connection points. And we've seen how self-management has been reivindicated and how we can really strengthen all of these actions using our previous experience and how we can really act in favor of SSE. We've seen examples, different examples of how people are already building these ways of generating well-being for all. And here we also talked about the importance of the legal work. I'm sorry if you might have heard some noise from my microphone. There is some noise around where I am, so I apologize for that. But as I was saying, the importance of the legal framework and its implementation in different countries and how there has been work done on social and solidarity economy in different levels of each country. And how through these examples, in each country, we can continue developing public policy so that we can move even closer to the accomplishment of the SDGs. I would like to thank you all for participating. And Lise, if you have anything to share, please go ahead.
Juste pour conclure, un grand
Just a final word. Thank you very much, Yazi, for having moderated and for the analysis lines that you've helped us develop. And thank you very much to the panelists for the high quality of their interventions, as well as the reflections that they shared with us. Thank you very much to the participants as well for having been here with us and having asked their questions. So today we have just taken part at the 4th sessions of the digital conference of the Mont-Blanc meetings. Next week, the 1st of October, 3 to 5:30 p.m., we are going to have a final session, and we are going to go backwards and work on all the different workshops that we have. We're going to have Nicola Schmidt, who is the European Commissioner for Social Affairs, Alain Donneau, philosophy professor, who lives between Quebec and France, Spatolisano, Lady Spatolisano, who is the Assistant Secretary General at the UN, and the pleasure of having Van Duren, who is president of UN Task Force on SSE, who worked at ILO. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week.